My name is Arthur Chen. At 62, I never thought I would have to learn how to live alone again. I thought I had already lived through the hardest storms a man could face. But losing Eleanor, that tore something out of me I did not know could be touched. 3 months had passed since her funeral, but the ache was still sharp. Some mornings I would wake up and forget she was gone. I would reach out to her side of the bed, expecting her soft breathing, her warmth. And then the truth would settle in. Heavy, cold, final. The will reading was set for a quiet afternoon in late November. The sky over Seattle was gray, the kind of gray that makes you feel like the day never fully wakes up. I sat in our penthouse living room with my hands folded tight. I kept my back straight the way I always did, even when my heart felt like it was bending in half. Attorney Peterson sat across from me. He was a calm man, careful with his words. Eleanor trusted him, and so did I. A few other family members were present, but the room still felt empty without her. She should have been there guiding everything with her steady presence. She had always been the one who planned ahead, saw danger before it arrived, and found a way to soften the blow. I relied on her more than I ever admitted out loud. Peterson cleared his throat and began reading her official will. His voice was steady. He went through the charitable allocations first. Eleanor had always been generous, thoughtful. She had built a foundation piece by piece to help people she would never meet. Hearing her wishes laid out felt like hearing her voice again. Soft, firm, kind. I was listening with quiet respect when I heard a sharp sound beside me, a scoff. My sister Vera sat with her arms crossed so tight her knuckles looked white. I tried to ignore it. I had learned over many years that ignoring Vera was sometimes the best path to peace. But she did not stay quiet. "You don't need to continue with that," she said. Her voice cut through the room like a knife. Peterson paused and looked at her. "I'm sorry, Vera. This is Eleanor's official. There's an addendum," she said, standing up. "One you clearly don't have." She reached into her oversized bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was creased and smudged, handwritten in thick strokes of ink. She tossed it onto the table between us like she was slamming down evidence in a criminal case. "That," she said, "is Eleanor's real will." For a moment no one spoke. I felt the air shift, heavy, sharp, and cold in a different way. Peterson looked confused. "Vera, this document has no notarization, no witnesses, no legal. It doesn't need any of that," she snapped. "What it has is the truth." Then she looked at me, not with pain, not with sympathy, but with something that felt like triumph, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "My son Jeffrey is actually Eleanor's biological child." My stomach dropped. I stared at her, unable to move. It felt like the entire room tilted. She kept going as if she had rehearsed every word. "Yes," she said, "Eleanor donated an egg years ago. My son was conceived with it, and she wrote this addendum to acknowledge him as her child, which means he is the rightful heir." A few people gasped. Someone whispered what another said. "That can't be possible." But Vera stood tall, holding her ground like she expected applause. I sat back in my chair, my hands now loose on my lap. Shock came first. Then a wave of disbelief. Then something else. Something colder, deeper. Not anger. Not yet. More like the feeling of stepping into a storm you had seen on the horizon for a long, long time. Peterson tried to reason with her. "This is a serious accusation, Vera, and without supported there is proof," she said, "in that addendum, in the details, in the dates. Anyone can see it." She lifted her chin, her voice rising with every word. "My son deserves his share, around 40% of her personal estate, and a position on the board of her foundation. It is what she wanted." She stared at me again, waiting for me to break, waiting for some reaction she could use. She wanted chaos. She wanted me to lose control. She wanted the room to see me fall apart so she could step over the pieces. But I didn't do any of that. I felt something settle inside me. Slow, solid, calm in a way I didn't expect. And then I laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was soft, almost tired. The kind of laugh a man lets out when a truth he has known for years finally shows itself in daylight. Vera's face twisted. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "Not funny." I leaned forward and looked at the fake will on the table. The handwriting didn't even look like Eleanor's. It was uneven and dramatic, so unlike her calm and deliberate pen strokes. What I felt wasn't amusement. It was clarity, because in that moment I understood exactly what she was doing, and exactly why Eleanor had warned me that something like this might happen. I turned to Peterson. "Please continue with Eleanor's official will," I said. My voice was steady, firmer than it had been in months. "My sister's document isn't legitimate. Eleanor prepared for this long before today." Vera opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off with a quiet shake of my head. "And I know," I said, looking directly at her, "exactly why you're doing this." The room fell silent. Even the air felt still. Inside me a wave of emotion rose, part grief, part disbelief, part sorrow for what had become of my own blood. But under all of that was a deeper, steadier truth. Eleanor had seen this coming. She had left signs, and now her quiet foresight was about to guide me again. I didn't explain anything more. Not yet. I let the silence hang there, heavy and unresolved, because I knew this was only the beginning. The storm had finally arrived, but Eleanor had already shown me where to find the lighthouse. When Peterson continued reading the official will, the room settled, but only on the surface. Inside me, something had shifted. I kept my eyes on the documents in front of us, yet my mind drifted far from that living room. What Vera said, the lie she threw into the air so easily, it did not just sting. It dragged open a part of my life I rarely visited, a part I guarded with quiet loyalty because it belonged to Eleanor and me alone. I sat there listening to Peterson's calm voice and felt myself slip into the past. Eleanor and I had been married for 35 years. When I met her, she was only 25, but carried herself with a steady confidence. She had a way of listening that made you feel seen even when you didn't know how to speak. And from our first date, I sensed she understood the world in ways most people never bothered to. But life had already tested her. When she was 25, she had survived cancer. She told me about it on a late night when we sat on a pier, our feet hanging over the water. She spoke of it plainly, not for sympathy, but for honesty. She told me she had undergone a total hysterectomy. No possibility of carrying a child. No chance of using her own eggs. The doctors had been clear. I remember taking her hand and telling her I loved her. Not for what she could or couldn't give me. Not for any future we might or might not have. I loved her because she was Eleanor. Because she was strong in ways that didn't show on the surface. Because she had survived something that would have crushed most people and still found room in her heart for hope. We never told anyone. Not my family, not hers. It was our private truth, and it made our bond stronger. And in all our years together, we never felt the absence of children as a wound. We built a full life. A life enough for us. So hearing Vera stand there and claim that her son was born from Eleanor's egg, it cut deep. Not because I believed her, but because she twisted something sacred. She took a part of Eleanor's past, something painful, something brave, and used it like a weapon, for money, for advantage, for whatever twisted satisfaction she was chasing. It made my chest tighten, my jaw clench. But I didn't let anger spill out. Not then. Because Eleanor had always asked me to stay steady when things grew dark. And I remembered her words. "When things get dark, look for my light, Arthur." At the time I thought she meant strength, or faith, or hope. But now I realized she had meant something else. Something she had prepared. Something she had left behind for me to find. After the will reading ended, I stayed seated for a moment. I watched everyone file out with their murmurs and awkward glances. Vera huffed and stormed ahead of them, whispering something bitter to Jeffrey, who kept his gaze low. He looked shaken, unsure, maybe even ashamed. He didn't meet my eyes. When the room finally emptied, I sat alone and let myself breathe. Slow, careful. My grief and my fury sat beside each other, heavy but quiet. Then I went into Eleanor's study. It still smelled like her perfume. Soft, clean, a hint of lavender. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, feeling the familiar ache. Then I walked in and opened the drawer she always kept locked. Inside was a small notebook, old, worn around the edges. She had kept it since our early years. I opened it and turned the pages, running my fingers over her neat handwriting. Most of it held notes about her foundation, ideas, lists of charities she admired, a few sketches of homes we once talked about building together, nothing unusual. But near the back, written alone on a page, was a single line. The lighthouse code, 1819, Eleuthera. I stared at it, my pulse picking up. Eleanor had mentioned light before. This couldn't be a coincidence. Eleuthera. That was the beach where I had proposed. A quiet strip of sand in the Bahamas. The place where she had said yes, with tears in her eyes. The place she called her heart's safe harbor. The memory hit me with warmth and pain all at once. Why that word, why that place, and what was the lighthouse, I didn't know. Not yet. But I knew Eleanor. If she left me this message, it had meaning. Real meaning. And I intended to find out. By the next morning, I contacted an old acquaintance, Frank Delaney. Frank used to work with a private investigation firm and now handled selective cases on his own. He had helped Eleanor once during a dispute involving her foundation. She trusted him. I did too. He picked up on the second ring. "Arthur," he said. "Been a while. I'm sorry about Eleanor." "Thank you, Frank. I need your help." My voice sounded different. Firmer. Sharper. He noticed. What's going on? I didn't give him every detail. Not yet. But I told him enough. That Vera had made a claim. That the claim was tied to money. That something felt off in a way only Vera could create. Frank let out a soft whistle. "Your sister always had a talent for trouble." "Yes," I said. "But this time, she crossed a line." "What do you want me to dig into?" "Everything she's done in the past 6 months," I said. "Every financial move, every communication, every connection she tried to make with anyone tied to Eleanor." There was a quiet pause. "Arthur," he said, "are you thinking this was planned?" "I'm certain of it." My voice didn't waver. Because the more I thought about Vera's dramatic reveal, the more obvious it became. She didn't stumble into this lie. She built it, practiced it, prepared it. And Eleanor, she had seen it coming before I ever did. Frank agreed to start immediately. After the call ended, I stood by the window overlooking the gray Seattle skyline. I watched the rain glide down the glass. I let the weight of everything settle into my bones. This wasn't just about a lie, or even about money. This was about defending Eleanor's honor, her memory, her legacy. She gave me 35 years of careful love, a life full of steadiness and thoughtfulness. She protected me even in the smallest moments, planned ahead even when she didn't have to. I owed it to her to follow the path she left, to find her light, to uncover the truth buried under Vera's greed. And I knew one thing for sure. Once I found the lighthouse, Eleanor built nothing my sister said would stand. Not her story, not her lies, not her will. I was going to tear her accusations apart piece by piece, guided by the woman who knew me better than anyone ever had. Frank moved fast. He always did. By the end of that same week, he had already gathered the first pieces of information I needed. But before he brought me anything solid, the situation took a turn I should have expected, but still hit me harder than I liked to admit. Vera went public. I woke up one morning to a string of messages on my phone, people asking if I was all right, if the rumors were true, if I needed help. At first I didn't understand what they were talking about. Then I opened the first link, and the second, and the third. There it was. Vera's story, her entire fabricated tale, had been picked up by small online news outlets, then pushed around social media. She claimed I was hiding her grand revelation that Eleanor had used her egg to help Vera's family years ago, that I was refusing to acknowledge a secret heir. The headlines made my stomach twist. Architect's widow leaves behind hidden child brother-in-law accused of suppression. Family heir at center of dispute in multi-million estate. People who never met Eleanor were suddenly speaking about her like they knew her. Strangers dissected her life, her choices, her body. Some commenters treated it like a scandal. Some took sides. Some accused me of being controlling and selfish. None of them knew the truth. I sat there on the couch with my phone in hand and felt a slow rising heat in my chest. Not rage, at least not the kind that bursts out. It was the quiet kind. The kind that burns low and steady without smoke. The kind that comes from watching someone disrespect the person you love. Eleanor had fought for her life at 25. She had faced down cancer surgeries, doctors' fear. And now my own sister turned her medical battle into a toy she tossed around for attention. I took a long breath and tried to calm myself. I knew Eleanor would want me to stay level-headed. She always reminded me not to let anger cloud judgment. And I needed judgment more than ever now. I put the phone down, walked to her study, and sat in her favorite chair. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "Look for her light." That helped. It didn't fix the situation, but it steadied me. Later that afternoon, Frank arrived. He walked into the penthouse and shook his head. "Arthur," he said, "your sister's causing a storm out there. I've seen it. She's not just stirring trouble. She's enjoying the attention." Of course she was. Vera always craved an audience. When she was young, she would make up stories about winning contests she never entered. As adults, she stretched the truth whenever it suited her. But this time she went too far and she knew it. That's why she wanted eyes on her. Lies felt safer when a crowd believed them. Frank pulled out a small folder. "But forget the noise. I found something more important. You mentioned a code and something called the lighthouse. Did you learn anything more?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Well," he said, "maybe this will help." He handed me the folder, then leaned back against the table with a thoughtful expression. Inside, the folder was more than I expected: notes he'd scribbled down, printed screenshots, timelines. But one document caught my eye, a list of recent online accounts tied to Eleanor's name. One of them was something I had never seen before: a secure cloud storage facility, high-level encryption. No one could access it without a specific key. On the account name next to Eleanor's initials was a simple phrase: "The Lighthouse." I felt a jolt in my chest. "So it wasn't a metaphor," I whispered. Frank nodded. "You said she was good at planning. This is serious planning. How do we get in?" He pointed to the code Eleanor had left in the notebook. "Try the numbers." And the location reference. I felt myself grow tense, but hopeful. It was the first clear direction Eleanor had given me since she passed. A few minutes later, I sat at my desk, typing slowly into the login screen. My fingers shook more than I wanted to admit. 1819 Eleuthera, I pressed enter. For a moment, nothing happened. My heart started to sink. Then the screen shifted. A soft glow appeared like a small circle of light in the center. And then the vault opened. Inside the digital vault were only 2 files. 2 documents, nothing more. My breath hitched. The first document was a set of medical records. Clear, official, unmistakable. It stated in plain terms that Eleanor had undergone a total hysterectomy at 25. The language was clinical and cold, but the meaning was absolute. She had no uterus. She had no eggs. She could never conceive. The second document was something I didn't expect. A notarized legal declaration signed by Eleanor years ago. Long before she even considered making her foundation. Long before Vera started showing desperation. It read, "I, Eleanor Chen, confirm that I have never donated eggs for reproductive purposes. I authorize the use of my medical information to protect my estate, my husband, and my reputation from any false claims in the future." My throat tightened. My eyes blurred. I placed my hand on the desk to steady myself. She knew, not the exact lie, not the details, but she knew someone, likely Vera, would one day try to twist something for personal gain. She knew her illness, her infertility, her quiet generosity could become tools for someone without restraint. So she built this: a barrier, a shield, a lighthouse. I sat there for a long time, staring at her signature. Her handwriting was steady and elegant. She had always written that way, even on bad days. "Thank you," I whispered to the screen. "Thank you for thinking ahead." After a few minutes, I downloaded both documents and called Peterson. I told him everything and asked him to meet me the next morning. When we sat together in his office, he put on his glasses, read the files twice, and leaned back. "This is airtight," he said. "No judge, no attorney, no sane person would believe Vera after this." I felt some relief, but not satisfaction. "Not yet. I don't want to confront her right away," I said. Peterson raised an eyebrow. "You don't, no. Let her keep going. Let her believe she's winning. If we push too soon, she'll hide her tracks. If we wait, she'll dig herself deeper." Peterson thought about it, then nodded slowly. "You want proof of intent, evidence that she knew she was lying." "Yes," I said. "I want everything clear. Not just for legal reasons, for moral ones." Saying those words made something inside me settle. I wasn't chasing revenge. I wasn't trying to scare her. I wanted truth, nothing more. And I wanted Eleanor's name to remain clean, untouched by greed. The next days were tense. Vera's lies kept spreading. She gave an interview to a small podcaster. She wrote a long post on social media about the unfairness of our family. She even implied, without saying it directly, that Eleanor had been pressured by me to hide the truth. Seeing her twist my loyalty into something ugly was almost unbearable. But I held my ground, because I had Eleanor's documents, and I had Jeffrey working behind the scenes. Whenever anger crept in, I reminded myself, she prepared for this. She left me the tools. Stay calm, follow the path. And piece by piece, the path began to reveal itself. Frank uncovered details I wouldn't have believed if they came from anyone else. He found communication threads, deleted messages, hidden accounts. And with each discovery, one truth grew clearer. This wasn't a moment of desperation from Vera. It was a plan. A plan she had built deliberately, step by step, long before Eleanor passed. She thought she could rewrite history. She thought she could twist loss into opportunity. She thought she could bury the truth. But Eleanor had seen the darkness long before it reached us, and she had already lit the lighthouse. I only needed to follow it. By the end of the second week, Frank had started piecing together a full picture of Vera's motives. It wasn't just the public lie about Jeffrey. It wasn't just the fake will. It was much bigger than that. And once I saw it all, laid out, a slow, quiet anger settled over me, one I had learned to control but which now demanded attention. Frank found evidence of Vera's financial desperation first. She had racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in gambling debts, much of it to friends who were now pressing for repayment. There were notices of foreclosure on her Bellevue home, utilities disconnected. Her bank statements, which Frank had managed to access through legal channels, showed rapid withdrawals, large sums, missing unexplained transfers. Every number, every line pointed to one thing: she needed money. Fast. And she had chosen my grief-stricken state as the perfect opportunity. Then came the messages between Vera and Jeffrey. I didn't read them at first. I didn't want the pain to reach me before I was ready. But Frank insisted I see everything. She's coaching him, he said quietly, handing me the printouts. She tells him exactly what to say, how to act. He's not even aware how deep this goes. I read them slowly, carefully. Each one made my stomach turn. The words were simple, almost casual, but the intent behind them was clear. We need the $2 million to fix everything. Remember, the foundation is ours too. Don't let Arthur see through it yet. Every line confirmed what I already suspected. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a scheme. A deliberate attempt to defraud me, to exploit Eleanor's death, to profit from something sacred. But Vera wasn't acting alone. Frank's next discovery was worse. A single email account traced to a premium forgery service showed she had hired professionals to create false financial documents. These documents had been carefully designed to look like authentic statements from the foundation. Signed, dated, detailed. The kind of forgery only someone desperate and confident could pull off. Even worse, a former acquaintance of the family, someone who had once been close to Eleanor, came forward. She testified that Vera had been collecting Eleanor's signatures, old letters, even financial records for months. She had kept meticulous notes, all pointing toward a future moment she could exploit. I felt a wave of emotion then. Grief, yes. Anger, of course, but mostly awe. Awe at Eleanor. Awe at the foresight she had, the careful planning she had left behind. It was almost as if she had known Vera would try this, and she had prepared a path to expose her greed, her manipulation, and her lies. I spent hours that evening going through another notebook Eleanor had left me, one marked with a discreet emblem of the foundation. It was thin, worn, and filled with lists of names, dates, and small notes. At first glance, it looked like ordinary records. But then I found a folded letter tucked between the pages. I unfolded it carefully. My hands shook. My dear Arthur, it began, her familiar handwriting, calming me even in her absence. I know Vera's greed. I know she will attempt to take advantage of my passing. I have prepared a small fund, separate from the main estate and the foundation. Use it to help young women fighting illnesses like mine. Let it be a reminder that love and care can flourish, even in the darkest times. Protect yourself, protect our work, and remember to act with patience. I closed the letter and let it rest on my chest. Eleanor had thought of everything, even the aftermath of grief, even the betrayal of blood. She had planned for justice without me having to fight blind. She had left me the tools to rebuild calm from chaos. I called Peterson again. "We have everything we need," I said. "Not just to protect the Foundation, but to ensure Vera's fraud is completely documented." Peterson agreed. "This is beyond enough, Arthur. The moment you confront her, there will be no question who is telling the truth." But I didn't want to confront her yet. I needed her to continue, to dig herself deeper. I needed her intent on display clear for the record. The evidence was enough, but waiting would make it irrefutable. In the days that followed, I worked carefully, methodically. Frank dug further into Vera's financial moves. He found evidence of more deceptive attempts to pressure Jeffrey, drafts of letters meant to intimidate Foundation members, even false receipts she had tried to create to suggest pre-existing obligations. Every step added to the picture of deliberate, malicious intent. Each new discovery brought a sense of grim satisfaction. Not joy, never joy, but a steady confirmation that Eleanor had been right. That her preparation, her foresight, had given me the upper hand. The upper hand not for revenge, but for protection, for justice, for truth. I spent evenings in her study reading the documents, reviewing emails, checking dates. Every page, every record felt like a conversation with her. She was guiding me, advising me, standing beside me even from beyond the grave. And then after 2 weeks, I found one final piece. Another envelope hidden behind a false panel in the study wall. It was small, unmarked, and heavy with expectation. Inside was a letter addressed to me personally in the same careful, deliberate handwriting. "My dear Arthur, if you are reading this, it means my warning was needed. Protect yourself. Protect the Foundation. Protect the legacy we built together. Use this final fund for good. Let Vera's actions remind you that some people will test the bonds of family when greed overtakes conscience. Act with calm. Act with patience. And always remember to follow the light." I folded the letter, slowly holding it to my chest. I let the weight of her words sink in. This was not about revenge, not about anger, not about punishment. This was about clarity, justice, integrity. Frank and I spent the next few days organizing everything into one comprehensive file for Peterson. Medical records, notarized declarations, emails, screenshots, witness statements, and Eleanor's letters, all of it. Each piece, each line, reinforced the truth. Vera's story, carefully constructed though it was, would crumble under the weight of the facts. By the time we finished, I felt an odd sense of peace. Not because the situation was resolved, Vera still had her plans, still had her lies, but because I could see the path forward. Eleanor had left me a lighthouse in the storm. I just had to follow it, and I would. I didn't let myself feel relief or triumph yet. That would come later. First, I needed to wait. Wait for Vera to continue her attempts for her lies to build, for her own actions to confirm the truth I already held. Then, when the moment was right, I would have all the evidence I needed. Complete, irrefutable, unquestionable. Eleanor had planned it this way, and I trusted her completely. In that moment, looking over the documents and letters, I realized something else, too. Eleanor's preparation wasn't just protection for me. It was a lesson. A quiet reminder that even when people betray, even when grief tries to overwhelm, careful planning, foresight, and patience could turn the tide. It was love, really. The kind of love that protects without being seen, that acts without needing acknowledgement. I held her final letter for a long time. I breathed in the quiet scent of the study, the faint trace of her perfume lingering in the air. And I felt her there with me, guiding me, steadying me, reminding me of the path she had left behind. The storm was coming, but I was ready. I was following the light. The day finally came when I knew confrontation was necessary. Weeks of waiting, observing, gathering evidence, all led to this. I didn't rush. I never rushed. Eleanor had taught me the power of patience, of letting people reveal themselves fully before acting. Vera was about to do just that. I arranged a private meeting at Peterson's office. The room was small, quiet, and neutral. No witnesses except the attorney and myself. I didn't invite anyone else. This was about control, not showmanship. Vera arrived late as usual. Her face was tense, her steps sharp. She tried to force a confident smile, the same one she always used when she wanted people to underestimate her. But I could see the cracks. Even without words, she had already sensed the weight of what was coming. Peterson gestured for her to sit. I stayed standing, hands folded, calm. I watched her. Every movement, every twitch of her eyes told me she was trying to read me, trying to guess my reaction. I let her. I let her wait. Slowly, methodically, I laid out the documents. First, the medical records. Then Eleanor's notarized declaration. After that, screenshots, emails, and evidence of her communications with Jeffrey. Finally, I placed Eleanor's private letter on top, letting the weight of her words settle in the room. Vera's eyes widened as she read or tried to read through the papers. Her confident mask faltered. She muttered, I don't. This can't. I didn't interrupt. I didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself. The clarity of Eleanor's foresight, the irrefutable evidence of her preparation left Vera stumbling. Each document contradicted her every claim. Every carefully constructed lie collapsed under the weight of fact. Peterson watched her carefully. Vera, he said softly but firmly, this evidence is substantial. You knowingly attempted to misrepresent your claims against Eleanor's estate and the foundation. You are in violation of multiple legal boundaries. Her breathing quickened. She looked to me as if seeking an escape. I didn't give one. This is your choice, I said, my voice calm, unwavering. You can either withdraw all claims and sign a legally binding agreement to never approach me, Eleanor's estate, or the foundation again, or face prosecution for financial fraud. For a moment there was only silence. Her eyes flicked between the documents and me, then Peterson, and back again. I could see the panic rising, the realization that her gamble had failed, the knowledge that every move she had made was documented and would stand in court. She began to tremble. Her shoulders shook. I watched as the proud, loud woman I had grown up with slowly crumbled. Not because I wanted it, not because I enjoyed it, but because justice demanded it. She had chosen this path herself. She had laid the foundation for her own downfall, with greed and deceit. Finally she reached for the pen. Her hand was unsteady. She signed the agreement without a word. When she finished, she placed the pen down and looked at me. Her eyes were wet, filled with tears, confusion, and the bitter taste of defeat. I nodded once, quietly. No gloating, no vindictive speech. This wasn't about humiliation. This was about finality. This is the last time you will ever speak to me, I said. We are done. Forever. Her sobs filled the room. She did not argue. She did not speak. She had no choice. I had given her every opportunity to act differently, and she had not. Now, the responsibility for her actions rested solely on her. Once she left, I sank into the chair Peterson had been using. I let the tension leave my shoulders, allowed my hands to unclench. I breathed slowly. Finally, I allowed myself to acknowledge the relief tempered by grief. With Vera out of the way, I turned my attention to Eleanor's last request. Her private fund had been established exactly as she had outlined. I transferred the money, carefully setting up a scholarship for young women fighting illnesses similar to those Eleanor had endured. Names, criteria, all of it, meticulously organized. Eleanor had given me the chance to do this while she was gone, and I intended to honor it fully. I remembered her words in the letter. Protect yourself. Protect the foundation. Protect the legacy. Act with patience. Follow the light. And that is exactly what I had done. As the scholarship began its first applications, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not the loud, satisfying kind, but the steady, enduring kind. A satisfaction rooted in the knowledge that Eleanor's legacy was intact, her intentions honored, and justice served without compromise. I stood by the window in the penthouse one evening, looking out over the city lights. Seattle spread before me, a patchwork of quiet streets and busy avenues, lit and unlit, alive and still. I felt her presence there, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a guide. Her light, the one she had prepared for me, had guided me through betrayal, grief, and uncertainty. I thought about our 35 years together, about the life we had built, about the lessons she had taught me, the careful foresight she had practiced, the quiet strength she had always carried. And I realized that her final act of planning her covert preparation was the ultimate expression of love. Not romantic, not grandiose, just precise, deliberate, protective. Eleanor had protected me, her name, and everything we had worked for. She had turned darkness into guidance, pain into preparation. And I had followed her path. I closed my eyes and whispered to her, "Thank you." I opened them again and smiled softly. There was peace in that smile, calm, assurance. A sense that, despite everything, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Eleanor had gone, but her light remained. Her legacy lived on. Her planning had ensured that no lie, no greed, no betrayal could touch the core of what she built. And in that quiet moment, I knew that I had honored her in the only way that truly mattered, by living with the clarity, patience, and integrity she had taught me. Her life, her wisdom, her foresight, those things would protect me forever. She was gone, yes, but her covert legacy still stood unwavering, and it always would. Thank you for taking the time to hear my story. I hope Eleanor's legacy and the lessons we shared inspire you as much as they continue to guide me. If you want to hear more real-life stories of love, loss, and the strength of the human spirit, make sure to subscribe and join our community. Your support means the world,